I find that Bullet and Trivium are really flying the flag for modern metal, and I think we're going to be bridging the gap. And this is something, if people didn't get to experience this 20 years ago, because that's definitely the way the mythos has grown. Like Bullet back 20 years ago, Trivium 20 years ago were the best shows they've ever seen. Now you get to experience that for real. Now you get to experience that with multiple generations of Trivium and Bullet fans.
Hey guys, James Wilson-Taylor here for Rock Sound. We're in Soho in London today. A very exciting announcement in just a couple of hours' time. Bullet for my Valentine and Trivium are hitting the road together early next year. I'm delighted to say that the two Matts, as they will henceforth be known, are joining me now. Matt Heafy and Matt Tuck. How are you, gentlemen?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. Good to see you both. Good to see you both. Let's dive into this very, very exciting news.
Cool.
Like we say, huge arena tour early next year.
Yeah.
Playing some key albums in full. You know the fans are going to go absolutely nuts for this when the news comes out. Tell me a little bit about when this idea kind of came together. First of all, you guys, I'm sure, have run into each other loads over the years, but like actually putting together a tour like this, when did that start to develop?
I think it was around August, September last year, right? Is when we actually connected and suggested the idea to Matt and the boys. And instantly it was like, of course.
Yeah.
It made total sense. It's something that, you know, over the last 20 years, we're a combination of band that our fans and Trivium fans have wished for forever, and it's never happened.
Wow.
So not only is it finally happening, but it's also coming together to celebrate a milestone year of 20 years of our big, you know, kind of first albums, you know. So it's a good vibe, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something that, exactly as Matt said, people have always thirsted for, people have always wanted. And just seeing the comments, seeing people say like, when they invited me up to come do Tears in Orlando, all these people were saying, this was my high school, this was my middle school, this is what got me into metal. And exactly like Matt said, it's like what we've done over these last 20 years with these records is truly something like a huge accomplishment. And I'm very excited to see what people see when they hear the formal news.
Well, as you've just alluded to as well, it is that wonderful thing where if you're a Bullet fan, chances are you're a Trivium fan and vice versa. Like it is a kind of dream tour for a lot of people, but also I think even on a more casual level, the fact is that people are going to be very, very excited about seeing both you guys because there's such a shared core fan base. That must have been something you kind of noticed a lot over the years as well, I'm sure, that kind of shared love, not just between you guys as musicians, but yeah, between those two fan bases as well.
Definitely. These last two runs that I feel both of our bands just did in the UK, you could see so many mixes of shirts. The majority of shirts we'd see are Trivium and Bullet shirts at our shows. And that's kind of been the case around the whole planet. And even speaking to other band folk, like bands that we're fans of, have been saying, these are the two bands that got me into metal, and I can't believe you guys are going to do this together. Because we've told a lot of friends in confidence. And I find that Bullet and Trivium are really flying the flag for modern metal, and I think we're going to be bridging the gap. And this is something, if people didn't get to experience this 20 years ago, because that's definitely the way the mythos has grown. Like Bullet back 20 years ago, Trivium 20 years ago were the best shows they've ever seen. Now you get to experience that for real. Now you get to experience that with multiple generations of Trivium and Bullet fans.
Yeah, and in some massive rooms as well. Let's talk about, the O2 here in London, like the Hydra in Glasgow, like all the venues that you want to see a massive big arena rock show, you guys are hitting. That's got to bring its own level of excitement and challenges. You know, you guys are used to playing big rooms. When you get into those big arenas like that, particularly with all these songs and these albums that people want to hear, you're going to want to go extra big production, I'm sure. There's how far into thinking about this arena show are you actually thinking in a minute?
Behind the scenes, I can only speak for ourselves, but yeah, we're starting to kind of put pieces together. We kind of know what we're working with. We've had experience of headlining arenas before, so it's not an unknown. What we need to do further down the line, though, is obviously because it's kind of that co-headline thing. We want to make sure that we can accommodate both band sets and try and make it work together and incorporate ease of coming on and off. Not, you know, it's a co thing. So we're yet to get into the nitty gritty, but that will be coming soon. But as far as the Bullet show goes, yeah, we're starting to put some bits and pieces together, and it's exciting. You know, it's like the O2, man. It's one venue that's eluded Bullet over the years, so we finally get to take that off, and we get to do it with the Trivium boys. It's gonna be mega. You know, can't wait, man.
It's gonna be a big night out. It's gonna be a big night out. And let's talk about the albums that you are going to be playing as well a little bit, because Matt, with Trivium in particular, I feel like that moment was where you guys really kicked off in the UK in particular. So it kind of actually feels right to be celebrating Ascendancy in the UK rooms, in the UK arenas, because like that is when this country really did fall in love with the band in a huge way, right?
Absolutely. I've always felt we were the adopted sons of the UK. I've always felt that this was the first place that it kicked off for our band. Before that, no one knew who we were. No one really come out to the shows, and we'd support all these bands around the US and sell maybe one CD and one T-shirt and just not have any love anywhere. And from that very first moment, we showed up at Wolverhampton. We were first band on that night as the Road Rage Tour, rotating bands. We're saying to ourselves backstage, like, man, I hope someone knows us. And we hear this sound from backstage, and we peek our head out from the curtain, and the entire crowd's chanting Trivium. And we're like, what is this? And then from that show on, things kept growing. They played the London Garage show. They were upgraded from the tent stage to the main stage at Download, then had the greatest show of our lives, which was one that we felt like we'd never be able to top again until this last Download performance we played. I felt like it kind of rounded everything out. What's going to be great, like I said a second ago, is that the people that got to experience this will be there, but then they'll be there with their kids. And we just did this last run. I remember seeing at the Stoke show specifically, I saw 3 generations. I saw a man in his 60s with his kid in his 30s, with his kid who was 12, 13 years old, all wearing Trivium shirts. I'm like, this is what this is all about. And I know that those kinds of legions of fans will be coming out for our 2 bands because it happened at the same time. And as we were making content together in Orlando, we were pulling out these magazines. Every magazine that had Bullet on the cover, Trivium was the main feature. Or if Trivium was on the cover, Bullet was the main feature. And it's something we talked about for years, like, hey, let's tour, but it wasn't concrete. But the fact that we're going to hit this, 2 bands having a 20-year anniversary of their fan favorite records is going to be something just, you can't, I feel like you can't plan a better thing like this. There's no better match that we could think of on the planet than Trivium and Bullet, really. Like, if we try to rack our brains of any band that would make sense, this is what makes the most sense.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. You really, really have. Absolutely. And then with the Poison as well, I mean, your debut's always going to be a special place in your heart, isn't it? It really, really is. But again, it took off so quickly. There's songs on that record that will absolutely never leave the set list, and they never should because they're classics, right? Again, it's got to be nice to celebrate that moment, but also see how far you've come, I guess, as well. You guys have really changed and developed over that time. It's got to be nice to be able to go back to the very beginning like this.
Yeah, it's a moment in time that the band will never forget. It's a record that, shaped a generation of musicians and metalheads after it. It was a huge album. And for a band to release a debut and it take off like it did, it's pretty wild. Yeah. That doesn't happen for lots. Sometimes it can happen on a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th album, or whatever for bands. But to do it on your debut is like pretty wild, man. Yeah. We just rode that wave, and we just want to give the fans that opportunity to celebrate with us. And like Matt said, there's people that are going to come to these shows that weren't even born when it was released. You know what I mean? That's wild. So for them to come and experience what it kind of was like 20 years ago, and the Poison was doing its thing, and it was kind of the center attention of everything we did because that's the only music we had. It's great. I'm just so proud of that record. I'm so proud of both bands for being around this long. That in itself is a huge achievement. Being a band for 20 years and still kicking ass, still being relevant, still playing massive venues and festivals worldwide. And then obviously again to go back to this tour together, to do that together simultaneously, it's like the stars are aligning, and it's a beautiful thing. I
love how excited you guys are for this year. It's excited as the fans are, man. It's great. That's really, really nice to see. And you mentioned as well, obviously, big different generations of crowds are going to be coming to shows, which I always notice at your shows, actually, guys. Like, you do get a lot of younger crowds who discover it the first time, which is always really nice to see. But on a similar note, we're now at the point 20 years on where there's this whole new generation of bands that we talk to all the time at Rock Sound who will cite you guys as very, very key inspirations. Right. That's got to be nice as well to see that kind of newer generation coming through, keeping that, spirit of metal alive, or whatever we want to call it. Yeah. And they are looking to these 2 records. Bands will have started because of these 2 records. That's got to be a whole other level of mindfuck, I guess, a little bit.
Back 20 years ago when that was happening, that was the least that we were thinking of, what I mean? It's like we were just focusing on the there and now, enjoying the moment, enjoying the success, and going along for the ride. But now we're sitting all these years later, and to hear that being talked about quite openly with people that we meet at events and shows and festivals and bands that are blowing up, the Trivium and Bullet, Ascendancy, the Poison, was a key moment in their lives, and it actually shaped them as people and as musicians, and now they have a career because those albums inspired them to do that today. That's an amazing feeling, right? That's something special that you can't explain.
That's absolutely, like Matt said, it's the dream. It's something you don't expect, but then afterwards looking back, you're like, this is incredible. Because I think of all these bands that we're big fans of. I love Malevolence, and Josh told me his high school years was listening to Bullet and Trivium. And then, being able to meet Harriet, and they said they were into us, and Bury Tomorrow, and all these incredible bands. Like, if you think of just the UK, the amazing bands that have been coming out of here, like Conjurer, Brady told me Shogun was one of his favorite records of all time, and this Japanese band Ryujin grew up listening to Bullet and Trivium, and they sent me this song that sounded very Bullet and like with very Trivium vocals. Like, man, this is so cool. That's the dream, the fact that we can inspire people to want to pick up an instrument. And then if 20 years ago we inspired, hopefully even in the smallest way, some people to pick up instruments, we get to do that again. And like, what's this next legion of bands going to be like who get to experience these pinnacle records 20 years later?
Man, so exciting, so exciting times moving forward. I want to mention as well, as I said before, some songs from both these records have never left the set list, and again, correctly so. I always like to ask people when they're doing full album tours, what are the moments you're already thinking, that's the one we need to get back in the rehearsal room on? Are there any moments that you're thinking, that's the moment I need to brush up on just a little bit because it's been a minute since it's been in the set list?
Declaration's a little tough for rhythms and guitar. That one's a little bit tough. And it depends. I mean, if we're doing some of the B-sides off the records as well, like Washing Away is pretty tough to play and sing. But
is that the plan? Are we thinking some B-sides as well?
I mean, I guess it depends once we see what the set lists are.
Sure.
Yeah, the set list timings are. But luckily, both our records clock in about the same time. It's like 55, 60 minutes both. So, yeah, we'll see.
Nice.
But Declaration, it's going to be a forearm workout.
Nice one.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there's about 15 songs on the Poison, so we only ever play about 4, so there's a lot to brush up on, but, we'll get there. We just need to obviously spend some time in the rehearsal room, and it'll be like muscle memory will kick in, I'm sure, pretty quick.
100%.
Yeah, so it's going to be fun. It's going to be challenging, but that's going to be great,
Yeah.
It's we're going on a bit of a journey here, and today is the start of that, and excited to ride the train,
I'm sure a lot of people will be asking as well, it is celebrating a 20th anniversary of these key records. Do we feel like this is the beginning of the celebration? Have we thought about reissues, any kind of extra celebrating?
We have.
I know you have, but I've got to pry these things out of you before record label people get angry at me.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for Matt and the Trivium boys, but like, yes, we're doing some very special limited re-editions of vinyls of the Poison, Hand of Blood, and combining a bunch of stuff, and behind the scenes never released footage and artwork and all that kind of good stuff. Maybe even doing a collab with another band, stuff like that. But that, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, of course, today's the announcement, and the next 10 months of building up to that moment, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff happening. On socials and content and music and all that cool stuff,
That's great. And we thinking Ascendancy as well, maybe some kind of bigger look back?
What we've been talking about is not even trying, but getting back in the headspace of Ascendancy. Since we'll be in that headspace, writing new music there, and definitely having Matt on vocals. He has to do it now that it's on film. He has to do it. So I think that'll be incredible.
Amazing. Oh, we'd love to see it. We'd love to see it. Well, before I let you guys go and get ready for this big press conference in the evening and the big reveal, the big announcement, I do want to look back just a little bit more. I would love to know, it's very clear how much you guys have changed as musicians and developed as musicians, and how much the band's changed and the different areas you've gone into. But whenever we look back at Key Albums List, I always like to ask what stayed the same. Is there anything you learnt making Ascendancy and learnt making the Poison that has actually stayed a part of your process since then? Anything you kind of picked up on those records?
It's more something that we notice in retrospect, because 10 records in now, we look at what our favorite records are. We love all the records we've done, but we see what processes that we've liked the most. The way we did Ascendancy is the way we do the records now, the last 3 records. We don't think of what kind of song we want. We're not writing to fit a specific thing, and we're not even writing during writing time. Ascendancy was all us in this absolutely disgusting warehouse on Fairbanks Road back in Orlando, this thing called Fairview Mini Storage, where people had like chop shops, and they'd store their busted boats. And we'd rehearse there and just play stuff, and whatever felt good, and I would ad-lib and make up ya, la, la vocals. But we'd end up shaping those vocal sounds into things like Flies was written like that, Deceive, Blinding Tears. Basically, the whole record was written that way. And so to see that free-spirited way of creating music that we just didn't think about. We didn't have fans. We didn't have anyone that cared. We didn't have a back catalog. Just making it freely. So that's how we've really applied the last 3 records. I think that's why the last 3 records have really connected so much, because it's a mixture of records 1 through 7 styles are record 8, 9, and 10. And there's a huge DNA imprint of Ascendancy consistently through those.
Amazing.
It's a pretty identical answer to what Matt just said, really. it was what we took from that album forward was to back ourselves and be confident and be fearless, and like the Poison, as the album as a whole, it's quite diverse. There's a lot of variety on there stylistically, and it was not something that we gave a shit about. We're just writing for ourselves. We were writing songs that we thought were good, and we didn't care if one song was a bit ballady, one song was a bit heavy, one was a bit metal, one was a bit hardcore. Like, we didn't give a shit. It was just us being us. We backed ourselves. Again, it was our first album, so we just fearless and didn't give a shit what people thought. And yeah, that's kind of something we've done pretty much since then. As far as being the main songwriter and the front man, I've had that attitude going forward. I back myself, and when you do that, as long as you're confident when you're writing, it brings out good things. It's when you lose a bit of confidence, that's when kind of you can doubt things, and that's when the writing process, the recording process can get a bit sticky and a bit stale. But yeah, just back yourself in confidence and have fun. Don't give a shit.
Yeah. Good lesson to learn early on as well. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a very good lesson to pick up early on.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I will let you go and get ready for this big announcement, but it's always a pleasure to see you both. Roll on January. This is
Absolutely,
very, very
man.
exciting news, guys. All the best till then, all right?
Thank you.
Good to see you, Matt and Matt, everybody.
See you.